Welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers, where our question today is, how different is it when you write your fourth book novel compared to your first novel? We want to welcome Cindy Sproles today, best-selling author and good friend to Eddie and I, here to welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers. Cindy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you here. I'm particularly excited about your new book coming out because it was my first introduction to you, Cindy. Um, and it's a book that has been simmering on your back burner for a long time. So, do you want to tell our audience the title of the book and the day of its true launch and a little bit about it?
Okay, so it's my fifth novel, and it is called Coal Black Lies, COAL, as in the coal mines. And that's what it is about. It's about the company store, and but it's also about how about the lies that we tell ourselves to justify the things that we do. And so that's kind of the underlying theme of the book. But there's a family who lost their daughter, and they come upon a little girl that has Down syndrome, and it's all about finding uh, her family and the lies that they tell themselves to hope that they can keep her, but they can't. And also too the lies they tell to justify the anger that they've had from the loss of their own daughter. So there's multiple things going on, but I'm excited. It's I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. It's been simmering for a long time.
It has, but I believe its time has come.
It
And
has.
Cindy, would you say that you've become a better writer so that you're better able to present this story? Because it's a little dark.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely become a better writer. But yeah, it is well, all my novels have a dark side too. I don't know what's the matter with me. uh,
No, I think it's
but,
love.
but within the dark side, I feel like I have to do that in order to make um, the life application real. And so my novels are not tied up in a sweet bow at the end, but they're satisfactory at the end. You're happy with how it ends. You wish it might have ended another way, but you're not mad that it didn't end that way. So but the big thing is the um, that within the novel, it allows us to learn a life lesson and apply that.
Cindy, I think that's your superpower.
Yeah.
And it's also why um, so many people love your stories because life is hard.
Yeah.
And and your stories are so relatable on so many levels for so many of your readers. And it as your characters process their uh, you know, angst and whatever they're going through, we can self-examine our own lives and there's some introspection that goes on, but your stories always have a redemptive thread, and that's the beauty of it. How do you respond when life throws you something hard, right?
Right. Yeah, that is the key, is how we respond. And I try to make my novels real. So that they are real in the sense that the emotion that we go through, the anger that we go through, because we don't usually go through a trial that we don't have anger and frustration and blame.
Mm-hmm.
We always try to blame somebody else for the reason that we are in the predicament that we're in. So I try to put those things in there, and then let people see how they resolve. It requires a lot of times, a little bit of soul searching. Uh,
Yes.
because you have to figure out, well, sometimes I can convict myself. on my stories that I tell. So um, it's it's a time I think where not only I learn, but hopefully other people learn from them too.
Well, I remember years ago calling you on the phone and saying, Cindy, is there something you haven't told me about your past or something? Because your stories, your characters are so believable. And I remember in your very first book, I was just like, oh my gosh, this girl, she has been through some things. And you explained to me then, and you've done it since in interviews and with your readers, that these ideas just come to you.
Yeah.
But you are an observer
Mhm.
of people, and you have an intuitive sense of seeing their struggle, and you have a heart that responds as you're able to people's hurts and struggles. So I think you bring all that in your novels.
Well, I try to.
So
I try
yeah,
to.
so thank you for that, because yes, definitely soul searching
Yeah.
goes on, and I've done my own when I read your writing. But how then, since you let this simmer, um, what changes did you make without giving your story away?
Oh.
But how did it feel
What
when you
changes
got it?
did I make?
Yeah,
I
like how did it feel when you brought it back out into the light? Did you make any changes?
It was due November 7th last year. And on October 1st, I rewrote the entire novel in a month. So
Wow.
yeah, so it needed, I don't know that I mean, it always needs improvement. There's always things that you can do better in it. But for me, the story was not ringing as true as I wanted it to. I wanted people to I wanted people to relate, number one, to this little girl that has Down syndrome. I have a child myself who has mental retardation, and there's lots of times that he kind of gets brushed off, even as an adult. He's an adult now, that. Um, and so there, for us, there can be a lot of emotion in that. And I wanted those kids to have I wanted people to see the side of a child who has a learning disability that most people don't take the time to look at. And that is that if you get to know these children, you won't find a greater love, and a greater respect that most of these children have. So I wanted people to be able to see that, see the heart of that, and see how this family allows this little girl to make a change in their life. So it needed, I wanted it to have a little bit more emotion to it. I wanted it to have a little bit more um, understanding of her
Mm-hmm.
and how she helped them work through their anger with the loss of their own daughter. So, yeah, I rewrote it from October 1st to November 7th. It was crazy.
Wow. Wow. And life was happening too in many ways for you outside of your writing
Yes.
life,
I was
right?
still attending conferences,
Uh-huh.
teaching at conferences. So I was in the middle of two different conferences. I had finished one, started the rewrite, worked on it, and then at night I was working on it, in the room when I at the conferences. So yeah, it was a push to get it done, but I was pleased with it after it was done. Um, I feel like um, it made that transition I wanted it to make. So yeah.
Well, and obviously your editor was pleased because the book is about to release, right? What's your
Yeah.
date of release?
I think they haven't told me exactly, but I think around the 7th of June. It'll either be it seems like it's usually the 7th or the 17th. So I'm thinking around the 7th of June. That
Great.
it'll release. So I have my street team lined up, and um so we're ready to go in another month or so.
Now, okay, I just had a thought, but it's very windy here at the beach. I'm going to blame it on the wind. But when you said about, oh, I know what it was. I had a question. So is it up for pre-order already
It
or
is. It is up
okay,
for pre-order.
great.
I did not know that until I went and checked the other day, but yes, it is up for pre-order.
Okay,
So,
great. Great.
um, yes, please
All
do
right.
pre-order.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's a great thing. People, you want to line up and get your copy because um, they tend to sell quickly. So get in there, get your book club. You know, your books make for great book club discussions, Cindy, because like you said, you're picking something that causes a lot of the readers to uh, look, do some self examination. So
Yeah.
yeah, and your son uh, that you had mentioned having a mental disability is such a dear person, and I'm so glad that I've watched over the years. He makes me laugh all the time,
He
you
makes
know.
us laugh too.
And I just he's a treasure. And so like you with my son having mental health issues, we want people to see our children and those afflicted with similar disabilities and diseases to see that you know there's more than their diagnosis. There's so
Yeah.
much more. Yeah,
And what
so
you see on the outside is not what harbors the inside. And, like he came home from work. He works at a grocery store, and he came home from work one day, and now keep in mind, he's 42. Uh,
okay.
he's worked at this grocery store for 27 years.
Wow.
But he came home from work one day and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What's a moron?"
Mm.
I said, "Why would you ask me that question?" Because that's not a word we use around our house. And he said, "Well, a lady pulled her little girl away when he was pushing babies in and said, 'Stay away from the moron.'" And
Oh,
so it's things like that that, make your blood curdle.
mm-hmm.
But also too, even though he's an adult in his mind, he's still childlike in a lot of ways. And those are very hurtful things, not
Oh,
just for him, but for
absolutely.
us. Uh,
Right.
I think that God blesses them in a way that they have this wonderful childlike understanding that kind of does protect them a little bit, but also too, that same childlike understanding can really ding you, when you least expect it. So, I just wanted people to see that. I wanted them to see um, that you don't look at somebody on the outside and decide, "Oh, that's a
Mm-hmm.
moron." You don't know their inside at all.
Right.
To know their insides first. And once you get to know the insides of a disabled child, like I said, you will find a greater love than what you could ever imagine, because they're
Yeah.
just genuine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we become hardened, you
mhm.
know, by our interactions, and their hearts seem to remain tender
Yeah,
towards strangers and everyone. And we certainly in the world could use a lot more of that, a
yeah.
lot more of that. So yeah.
Well, so in
Um,
this book, not only are you getting that, but you're also getting a little history lesson on the company store, and what it did and how it held on to the miners, which really, sadly enough, was still even in effect into the 80s. The company store still held quite a hold on its miners. And so it was, a little bit of history there, to kind of give you a little thread, a historical thread, and how we hoped that this character in this story named Joshua would be able to help change things. So,
well, and you know, we're always surprised to find out historical facts like this. You and I talked about the orphan trains
yeah,
a couple years ago, and it was so surprising to me that And then we talked about how children were put in the
Mailed.
mail and mailed, you know. And I was just like, who in the world would mail a child across the country?
And
I just didn't.
why would the U.S. Post Office allow it? But they did. Yeah.
Right. And so I love when tucking into one of your stories, because I always find out historical things that, you know, just aren't well known.
Yeah.
And it's like with Black history, there are so many stories that haven't been told. And it's Black History Month this month. And I've had clients that have written stories that just, I'd pick up the phone and go, what? This happened? This really happened? And then sure enough, you Google it up and it's like, why aren't we told this in history classes? But I guess there's so much to teach. It's kind of like they can just give us bits and pieces, but you know, it's
Well,
stories like,
I think the fun in historical fiction is learning those little facts. It's not that the
yes,
story is built on those facts. The story is kind of opposite, but what makes historical fiction so lifelike is that it drops into the life of those people.
yeah,
And so the incidents happen. You see it just like we said, the next novel has that in there about the little kid being mailed across the country. So, you it's a little bit of a shock. You go, oh my goodness. But then that's the historical touch, that's in there. It makes people, I think it makes people go say, is that real? And then they have to, actually go look it up and go, oh my gosh, it is real. So
exactly.
that's the
Yeah.
fun part, I think, about writing historical fiction.
Well, and you bringing story to life with, you know, um, portraying fictional characters, but they're so believable because they are caught in these very circumstances.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives us peeks into these historic eras, so yay, I love that. so so you're contracted for another book
Well,
and it has
no,
this.
I'm waiting to see if I'm
You're waiting.
contracted for it. Yeah.
Okay, you're waiting.
That can be a long wait, but yeah, proposals are out, and so we're waiting to see if they, if they buy it with the little kid that's being mailed across the country.
I,
Uh, so we're
I
waiting.
think I would like to see a television show that, historical show that shows that, and kind of just, I mean, it was desperate times, right, for parents. And, you know, they, when you have so many mouths to feed and you can't feed them, you of course want your child to have a chance to live. And so, yeah, wow, what some parents have had to do, the choices they've had to make, you know, it's interesting that, you're writing about that. Um, so you've got the novel going. Do you have anything else that you're working on besides?
Yeah, our conference is in a couple of weeks. I direct the Asheville Christian Writers Conference, and that's coming up the end of this month at the Cove. And we're fortunate that God smiles over us, and we're sold out. Uh, so we're excited about that. It's a weekend, next last weekend in the month. So that's what we're gearing up for right now. And then tomorrow, I'm leaving to run cross country a little bit, not run physically, drive with Lynette Eason. Lynette's doing book signings in Nashville and Kentucky and in Knoxville. And so I get to sign books with her in Knoxville, but I also get to be with her in these other two places. So it'll be fun to spend some time with Lynette. Yeah, that's the fun part too, about, making writer friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get to spend a little time with her this week. Unexpected time. We weren't expecting it, but it'll be fun. So
Yes.
those are two of the things I got going. And then more conferences gear up and get going. I have one or two conferences a month for the next
Wow.
6 months. So
Wow, Cindy.
yeah,
Yeah. Now tell the listeners what you teach at these conferences.
um, a little bit of everything. I teach, well, of course, we teach devotions a lot, how we write devotions on Christian devotions. We teach that quite a bit. But also too, I've been teaching a storytelling class. Um, and the things that you need to do to learn to tell a story, not only on paper but in real life. Uh, I've been teaching a class on writing Christian worldview um, into your fiction and nonfiction, so that you can move into that market, into the general market. Um, oh gosh, lots of stuff. I can't remember them all. Um,
Well,
yeah,
those are
lots.
great. Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. I've read books where it's not they're published in the general market, but then you if you're a Christian, you see the worldview
Mhm.
because you recognize it, but it's not overt. And I think that's a real skill to write that way. And it's a beautiful way to write. And because truth is truth, and it can stir up a hunger for God, when you're presenting godly, you know, character and
And a lot of times we have to, as Christian writers, we have to kind of break out of the mold, and learn to present things differently than what we're accustomed to normally printing or writing for people. So you have to remember that where it used to be, there were more you know, people who attended church. Now it's the opposite.
mhm,
There's less people who attend church and more who do not. And when you
right.
start to look at their children and their families, most of them have never been through the door of a church, especially their children. And
Hmm.
so you can't really start throwing God around until you understand that they don't know who that is.
Right.
So the scripture that talks about where we need to move from milk to bread, meat. We kind of got to go backwards and, start refeeding milk. So writers have to learn to present their stories uh, a little differently than what we're accustomed to doing. And that's hard, so a lot of them have in their mind, this is how you teach it and this is how you do it. And but yet they want to break into the general market, and that you can't make them understand a general market is not going to understand that. So
Hmm.
it's a learning curve for them. They have to. You're not abandoning your religion, or what you believe. You just have to learn to tell it a different way.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. And, so many people lean on their Christianese and, because there's a way we talk, right? Within
yeah,
our circles. In fact, Cindy, is that book still published, the one you wrote about learning the lingo? That just reminded
it's
me
still
of
available. Yeah, it's
the
still
writing resource.
yeah.
That just like in we speak Christianese, there's a lingo in the writing world, and Cindy has a great little book that just uh, helps a writer that's new in beginning to write and to understand the lingo that editors use, publishers use, and conference teachers use, and it's such a good book. I've recommended it many times. In fact, I was getting ready to recommend it to someone I'm coaching, and then I thought, I have to check to see if it's still in print because I know it's been a
I
while.
think it is.
I know it's been a while, but I thought it was such a valuable resource because I have to explain to my clients every time what I mean by certain things like rue and
Yeah.
these things. But once you get it and you define it for somebody, then as they go through working with an editor, then they understand. And it helps the editor keep from having to explain it over and over and over again, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first conference, I walked around with people saying POV and RUE and all this kind of stuff, and GWS, and I was like, what on earth? So I started writing it down on my palm. And when I went to a meal, I would be listening to people, and I would start to ask, how long have you been coming to conferences? Oh, this is my first one, so I'm not asking you. How long have you been coming? Oh, 3 or 4 years. Can you tell me what this means? No, because I went to a high school, a county high school, a poor county, and we didn't have creative writing. We
Mm,
had basic English, all
yeah.
4 years. So I didn't know what POV was. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. What I learned, I had to dig and learn, through conferences. So it's important to go to conferences because that's where you learn. You go in and be green completely like I was, and um, but you have to have some way to learn what all that stuff means. So yeah.
Right. And Cindy, would you say that a large percentage of the people that come to your conference, the Asheville Christian Writers Conference, it's about 50-50 with newbies, isn't it?
Oh
Or
no. Oh
no?
no. It's more like 80% are brand new. Uh,
That's awesome.
and last year it was 92% last year. So
Wow.
we have a handful of 8 or 9 people who continually come back. But one of the things that we do with our conference is we begin to pray with our prayer warriors. As soon as this one's over, we start again. That God will send the people. Excuse me. God will send the people that He would have attend the conference,
Hmm.
and that's why I said every year we sell out, because the people that are there because we prayed for them to be there.
Yeah.
Um, and so God has sent those people specifically to our conference. So we get a lot of new and new writers and um, I want to say young writers, not young as in age, but new writers as in brand new, young writers as in who have just started learning and moving along. They maybe have written a year or two. They're not up to advanced level yet. Though we do offer advanced classes, for those people who come that are a little bit more advanced. But we're kind of tickled um, that we get to be the first ones to help them, number one, learn what their call is, because we believe we've all been called to do something, and they're there because God called them and they listened. So that is one of the things that Eddie always asks our conferees at the end. Take time, write down on a little card one sentence, which writers have a real hard time writing one sentence. One sentence on when you first heard the call. And in fact, I just put that in our newsletter and said, okay, get ready. One sentence. We're going to ask you this. And then when it's over, Eddie and I take all those cards and we sit down and read every single one. And after we read them, then we pray over them and we bury them on the mountain, because we put them back at the feet of God because that's their calling. And we want to put that back at the feet of God so that they um, hopefully listen, pay attention. God pays attention to them.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
that's beautiful. That's
yeah, so
beautiful.
that's what we try to do anyway. So,
Well, and
out right now, we're sitting at about 85% brand new.
that's
So,
awesome because you create with that conference such a welcoming, um, you know, it's a smaller size.
mhm.
And how many registered this?
We
How
can have
many?
119. That's all.
Okay. But
And
it's so
yeah.
intimate and it's such a wonderful, nurturing place for a new writer to start out. I remember when my pastor came, Cindy, you might remember Nick coming, and every time he passed me in the hall, I had been begging him for like 3 years to come to a conference. And so he finally came. I told him, it's right here in your backyard. And he came, and every time he passed me, he would go, and And then he's like, why didn't I listen to you? Why didn't I listen to you? And he has just taken off, with writing and speaking. And yeah, it's a great
I'm
place. So,
always I'm always tickled to find out, to go to another conference, like to leave our conference and go to Linda Gilden's conference in Spartanburg and
mhm,
see right after our conference, her conference happens, and see some of those same people who said, "Oh, I heard I want to come because," and then to go to Blue Ridge and keep
yes,
running across people who came for
yeah,
the first time to our conference, and that's what we hope is part of the ministry. It's not a race to see which conference gets
right,
the most riders. Hopefully it's a race to make sure that when we teach them, that we inspire them enough that they want to go on to a larger conference and they can get their feet wet at our conference and kind of understand how to go to a conference, what happens, and then also too to find that really, people are just people. They are
right,
approachable, and
yeah,
so then when they go to a larger conference, kind of takes that fear factor out. So
yes, I
nice to
agree.
see that.
I agree. Cindy, we just have a few more minutes. What would you like to say to a writer that's maybe had published a book and now their life happened and they had to lay it down for a while and now they're starting back? Do you have any encouraging words for maybe that writer?
Well, from one who's done that, I would say you're not the only one in the world who's done that. Um, I think a part of it is that we don't believe enough in ourselves to think that we can actually do this. So we tend to lay it to the side and nobody's going to pay any attention to that. What I have to say is not that important. But really, if you're a Christian and you're watching this, then chances are, you do know that God places in your heart those things that He wants you to do. So you just have to learn to accept the fact that, oh, this might be something God actually wants me to do. And then allow Him to lead you through it. Don't say, oh, God told me to write this because, but you let Him lead you through it, because then it will happen, and it'll happen in His time. So be patient. I find many writers are not, me included. you know, um, be patient and be persistent. Just keep doing it. I think for me, the biggest thing was I'm not a quitter. Um, I keep, even when I get knocked down on things or told no, I'm that just spurs me to want to keep learning. Okay, so what did I do that didn't, mesh to help me get the next contract? So I'm always learning. So I think, keep that attitude of being willing to learn and being willing to be coach. And then if you need help, asking for it.
Yes, that's so
So,
good, Cindy. Asking for help when you need it.
mhm.
And like you said, when they come to a conference and they meet editors and agents and other well published, acclaimed authors, uh, they do see, like you said, that they're approachable and
Mhm.
that they're there to help. That's why they show up. That's why they spend their time traveling like you do all over and months away from your family, weeks or at a time and back and forth and flying and uh, driving and sleeping
Right.
in airports or whatever. But you're
Yeah.
doing it because you're called to help. And Cindy, I just want to thank you for that because so many writers have been helped through your conference, through Christian devotions, through giving them platforms, Inspire Fire, these platforms for people to get started. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And check out Cold Black Lies, soon to be released. Get
Yeah.
get on there and pre-order it. And I guarantee you're not going to want to put the book down because that's the problem. Take the time. That's the only problem with Cindy's books is you got to carve out the time because you're going to be up all night, most likely. So, Cindy, thank you for being here with us at Reality